Well, hey everybody. Today on our little adventure, we have come to, wait for it, I'll ask Rock Doctor Dad. You know where we're at?
Yes, we're at Earp, California.
We are in Earp, California. Now, the original name of this place was Drennan,
Drennan.
California, and they named it Drennan, California in 1910. They
Why?
didn't actually change the name to Earp, California until after 1929. And yep, it was actually named after Wyatt Earp, which is the reason why we're actually here. We're chasing
Yeah.
a little story about Wyatt Earp.
Right.
So we've come to Earp, California, and like I said, it was originally called Drennan, and it was renamed Earp, California after Wyatt's death in 1929. Now, everybody basically knows the story about Wyatt Earp and Tombstone and the fight at the OK Corral. In fact, we've actually been over to the OK Corral and we saw where the whole thing happened. That was a while ago.
Yes, that was quite a while ago.
Quite a while ago. So anyway, a lot of people know the story of Wyatt Earp and Tombstone and his being a citizen of Tombstone and actually part of the law in Tombstone and the fight at the OK Corral. But what they don't know is after he left Tombstone, Wyatt came this way. He came a little bit further west, and actually he and his common law wife, Josephine Sarah Marcus, they came this way, and they actually spent their summers in Los Angeles, and a lot of other stories and a lot of other adventures that they went on and all that. And the video is not about the life and times of Wyatt Earp and that sort of thing. But what's fun is literally right here in Earp, California. He came through here and he started coming into this area in about 1906. So he came through here, and we're about ready to head over to another little significant place here. He actually, with his common law wife, Josephine, they purchased a home in Vidal Junction, which is just down the street or down the road here. And this was the only home that Wyatt and Josephine ever owned. And it was right here in Vidal Junction. So today, we're starting here in Earp, California, and then we're going to go down the road. We're going to take a look at their home that they had purchased in Vidal Junction, and then we're going to go out and we're going to take a look at the reason why he was in Vidal. And there's a huge reason as to why he settled with his wife in Vidal Junction. Do you know what that is?
Copper mine.
He had a copper mine in the area. In fact, it was actually, he called it the Happy Days Mine.
Happy Days.
And we're going to go out and we're going to take a look at the Happy Days Mine as well. And so our little adventure today is all about Wyatt Earp and his little stay here in California. And like I said, he started coming through this area in 1906. He wound up spending the last bit of his life from about 1925 to 1928 here in Vidal. And he actually didn't die here. He actually died in Colma, California, which is basically just south of San Francisco. So that's where he's buried. So he's actually buried in Colma, California. And but like I said, he spent the last few years, 1925 to 1928, here, and he died in 1929, January 13th, 1929. So now what's really significant about this,
I was 2 years old.
you were 2 years old when Wyatt Earp, you were alive when Wyatt Earp was alive.
Yes.
That is amazing. That's pretty cool. So anyway,
I didn't get to know him. No.
You didn't
No.
you didn't meet him?
No.
Okay.
Meet him at
All right. Well, so the pleasure of having a dad that's almost 98 years old is that, you know, there's been a lot of history that this guy's seen. So he was alive when Wyatt Earp was still alive.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're gonna take a look at well, here in Earp, there's not a lot in Earp. There's the post office right behind us in Earp, and then we're going to after the helicopter flies by, we're going to head on down the road. We're going to take a look at the home that they owned in Vidal Junction, and then we're going to head on up to the Happy Days mine. What do you say?
That sounds like a winner to me.
All right, well, let's head on down the road. Join us. Okay, I know I said that Wyatt died January 13th, 1929, and right outside the post office appears to be the grave of Wyatt Earp. However, like I said in the intro, Wyatt didn't die here in California in Earp. He actually died in Colma, California, just south of San Francisco. And that's actually where he is buried. He's buried in Colma, California, just south of San Francisco. But right outside the post office here in Earp, California, is a symbolic grave. And so don't be fooled. If you ever stop in Earp, California, you'll see this marker out here. And it's not much of a grave, but anyway, they've got a marker that says RIP Wyatt Earp. So, but this is not his grave. His grave is in Colma, California. On the back side of the post office is part of an old water tank that says welcome to Earp. Like I said, it was originally called Drennan, and they changed the name to honor Wyatt, who had been coming through the area for quite some time. Well, hey everybody, we're just going to pause briefly here in the video. I want to just put a little insert in. I know it's been 3 weeks since we put out a video, and actually by the time you're watching this, it's probably going to be close to 4 weeks. And I know I've tried to fill in with 4 shorts about Camp Ibis, but right after we filmed the video that you're watching right now about Wyatt Earp and the Vidal Junction home and Wyatt's mine, Rock Dr. Dad was, you know, he was all the way through the video. He was with me during the intro. As we continue to watch the video, you're going to see he's going to be there at the end. He celebrated his 98th birthday on the Tuesday after we filmed the Vidal Junction video. And then on Wednesday, he decided that he was going to see what was on the floor, and he wound up breaking his hip. So at the ripe old age of 98, Rock Dr. Dad is now getting better from a broken hip. So the advantage that we have here is not only is Rock Dr. Daughter here a great drone pilot, but she is an outstanding nurse, and she is an RN, and she is carefully watching over Rock Dr. Dad, and he has undergone surgery. He now is partly bionic. He has a rod in his left leg, and 2 screws.
2 screws.
And so he is in the process of learning how to walk again. So I just want everybody to know we're not taking a break. We're not standing back from videos. We've just had a little bit of a setback as far as Rock Dr. Dad and all the doctor visits that we have to do with trying to get him up and walking again. He has made it very clear that he is going to return to the videos, and he actually asked me yesterday which video we were going to film next. So that's a good sign. We just need to get him a little bit more stable on his legs, and he will be back joining us again and filming the videos. So if you want to know a little bit more about Rock Dr. Dad, for those who are subscribed, make sure that you check out our posts on YouTube. I do put our information, current stuff that's happening on our post, our community page. So
make sure you check there. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check there, and you'll be able to see the post. And I'll try to keep you updated on Rock Doctor Dad's progress. So, like I said, she's watching him. He's going through. He just got done with physical therapy, and he's now going to continue on. Physical therapy, but it will be it's a different type. It's outpatient physical therapy. So we're going to be starting that, and we're going to get his legs moving again. And he promises to return very soon to the videos, and he wants to make a triumphant return. So watch for that. Watch for the posts. Watch for the community page. Subscribe so you can see all that stuff. And I now return you to Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp.
And Wyatt Earp's mine.
There's not a lot left at Vidal Junction. This is an old gas station, so it's pretty much just it's a deserted ghost town right along the tracks. And so this is an old gas station right alongside the road, and you can tell we're parked right over here, and that is the road going to Blythe. So the old gas station literally sits right alongside the road. You got the 3 pumps here, and then what's left of the gas station, and it's in pretty sorry shape. So there's, like I said, there's not much left in Vidal, and I'll highlight a couple of these buildings just so you kind of see what's going on. And I know this is private property, and it's in bad shape, so I don't want to spend a lot of time here, and it's certainly not very stable. And so just I'll just give you a kind of a little hint as to what this place looked like. The old garages back here. Right across the street from the gas station, where we have our car, is another one of the pieces of history that's still standing in Vidal, and that is the old water tank. For what I have been told is the old steam locomotives that used to come through here. So that water tank is no longer in use, but it is literally right alongside the tracks. So as the trains came through, they took on water here at Vidal. And you can see there's really not an awful lot left out here at Vidal. But we're going to go over and take a look at a few other buildings here before we take a look at Wyatt Earp's home in Vidal Junction. Here's another one of those really old structures left from Vidal, and obviously you can see by what's been spray painted on the outside, it is privately owned, no trespassing, so we're not going to go over and go through it at all. But it is the J.M. Heacock building. But just look at the way that the building was constructed. So pretty outstanding. Like I said, I'm not going to go over and look inside. It's private property, and it says no trespassing. It says keep out. So I don't know if you can take a look through the windows, but I'm not going to get any closer. But the outside of the building is just, I mean, they put a little bit of construction into this building, and hence the reason why it's still standing. And right next to it is probably the reason why this building is not, is it was not as well constructed. But I'm pretty certain this dates to the time when Wyatt Earp was living in Vidal. Here's another view of the property. Then I just noticed something really interesting about the front of the building. If you come over here to where the front door is located, there's actually a rock that has been incorporated into the front of the building that has petroglyphs on it. So this would have dominated the front of the building, and there's There's one with petroglyphs right there, and there is another one right above it with petroglyphs. So they did a pretty good job of incorporating the local rock geology into it. There's also, if you take a look really carefully, right above the rock with the petroglyphs, you can see the turquoisey, kind of bluish colored rocks. That is the mineral chrysocolla. So that is the copper silicate that has been mined in the area. So it too is incorporated into the front of the J.M. Heacock building. All right, we have arrived at the only home that Wyatt Earp and Josephine actually owned. And this, here I said, this is in Vidal Junction. Now, mind you, it obviously would not have had the modern day garage attached to it. And the house has been restored, and it is privately owned. So, one, we can't go any further than the fence. So you're just gonna have to take a look from the outside of what it looked like. But can you imagine 1925 to 1928, Wyatt Earp would come out here with his wife, and they would live in this home while he worked the Happy Days mine that we're about ready to go and take a look at. So he would leave Vidal and he would travel to the mine and he would work in the mine and then he would come back home. Can you just imagine old Wyatt sitting on the porch just admiring the afternoons during the much cooler winter months here in the Mojave Desert? So now I know, once again, there's modern air conditioning on the side of the building, but in 1925, there would not have been any modern air conditioning on this building. So they would have opened the windows, there would have been a cross breeze that went through, and sitting out on the porch, I'm sure, was probably a nightly affair. So this is the home of Wyatt Earp and Josephine Earp. There's also a plaque out front, and I will show you the plaque, and then I will also take a picture of it and put it into the video. But once again, you can pause the video and you can read the plaque, but I'll make sure I include a still of it, and then that way you can pause at your own leisure and read the plaque. And here's the other side of the home. So, like I said, it has been restored. So, but this is pretty much what it would have looked like back in 1925 to 1928. And what's even more amazing, just like our intro said, my dad, Rock Doctor Dad, would have been 2 years old while Wyatt Earp was still living in this property at Vidal Junction. Across the street is the water tank for the train. And off in the distance, if you take a look at over the car, and I'll put an arrow to it, is the approximate location of the Happy Days mine that we're about ready to go out to. So he would travel from here, and he would travel all the way over to work in the mines right up alongside the Whipple Mountains. All right, let's go on over to the mine site and take a look at where he was making his living mining copper. We have driven as far as the car can take us. Rock Doctor Dad and Rock Doctor Wife will hold the fort down while Rock Doctor Daughter and I will make the last portion of the trek on foot to the mine site. Being a warm spring day in the Mojave Desert, we have to always be alert to our slithering rattlesnake hosts. Every rock and bush you see could potentially be the resting spot for our famed friends. The mine site dates back to 1906 when Wyatt began working gold and copper mining claims in the area during the winter months. He eventually staked more than 100 claims near the base of the Whipple Mountains. We're on the final push to get to Wyatt Earp's Happy Days mine that he mined up here in the Whipple Mountains. But there are all sorts of little shafts or little adits throughout this entire ridge. There's one right in front of the camera, and I'll put an arrow on it so you can see. And then there are some other little prospecting pits all along the way here. Now, the mineral that he was after, he actually used this spot to prospect for copper and gold. And the copper mineral that he was after was copper silicate, which is otherwise known as chrysocolla. And chrysocolla is a bright blue mineral. I'll put a picture of it in the video here so you can see what he was looking for. It would stand out against this black rock that you can see, this brownish black rock that you can see. So it would be fairly easy to trace once you found it inside the mine. All right, let's keep pushing. What we're doing, Rock Doctor Daughter and myself, we're actually heading over to that tree that you see in the distance, and then hopefully the mine should be located right by the tree. If not, it is still lost, but we'll hike on over to the tree and see what we can find. All right, we've made it across the wash now, and we're heading up the other side of the ridge. And just so you know, I'm going to reverse here. Rock Doctor Daughter is right there. Hey, and just while you're looking, dig that hat. Wow, that's a one and only Rock Doctor hat. That is the only Rock Doctor hat in existence so far. So, if you're interested, let us know. Let us know in the comments that we should be putting out a hat. So, but that's what it would be looking like. So if you're interested in the Rock Doctor hat, there it is. She's modeling our first and ever Rock Doctor hat.
We have black and tan options.
Ooh, black and tan options. All right, let's get over to this mine. Should be right up ahead of us here. I'm going to take a little bit higher route up here, and we're getting closer to the mountain. Now keep in mind, Wyatt would not be mining out here in the dead of summer. So as I stated earlier, Wyatt spent his winters out here, and he spent his summers in the Los Angeles area there towards the later ends of his life. So it would be much cooler during the time when he was actually mining out here. So he would not be mining in the Mojave Desert when it was 120 degrees. And by the way, anybody who's been with us on this channel for a while, we had a little incident when we were doing St. Thomas. And I just want everybody to know it was 75 when we left the car. And we have plenty of water and electrolytes with us just in case. But it's a really nice spring day here in the Mojave. Okay, we've made it to the tree, almost. We're like within 25 feet of the tree, but you'd think you would be all by yourself out in the middle of the Mojave Desert here, but we are not. In fact, we've arrived at the mine site to be greeted by a number of people over there. So we'll walk over to the tree, we'll show you what we've got going on over at the mine, and then we'll kind of make a decision from there on what we want to do. We do have the drone with us, so maybe we'll get the drone up in the air, fly around, take a look at what's going on here, and then maybe we'll walk on over to the mine after the people start clearing out. So yeah, stay tuned and I'll show you what's going on over here at the mine site. Okay, here we are coming up onto the tree that we were shooting for. The car's probably about a mile back, but it's a car and it's not a four-wheel drive. So we left it back there with Rock Doctor Dad and Rock Doctor Wife. And so we've made it to the tree, and lo and behold, like I just said, we have a number of people that are up at the mine site taking a look around at what's going on at the mine. So we'll kind of hang out here, take our turn before we go up to the mine, and then we'll go up and take a look and see what we can see. All right, it looks like it looks like they may be clearing out. So we're going to be waiting for him to take off, and then we're going to walk on up and see what we can see, what they were doing. Oh, a little bit of hill climbing going on. Oh, they're just turning around. So, all right, so let's wait for them to clear out, and we'll go around and we'll take a look at
what we can see. But in the foreground here, these are all tailings piles. So there was a little bit of material that was taken out of this mine, so, and stacked out in front of it, which is the usual case as to where they would put the tailings that came out of a mine. Okay, let's walk on up to the tailings piles here. You know, a little bit of a geology clue. If you ever find yourself out and you want to find the minerals that they were looking for, then check out the tailings piles. Because remember, back in the 1800s, their mining techniques were not all that great. It was actually just, you would set some dynamite, you would blow the crud out of the hill, and then you would go in and you would sift through what was blown out of the mine, and you would take out the high grade pieces, and everything else was stored out in front of the mine, which is here. But oftentimes there was a lot of material that they bypassed in this mining process, which was not really high tech. So always check out the tailings piles. You never know what you might find. For instance, let me flip the camera around and let me show you what I just picked up, which is the mineral that Wyatt Earp was after. Okay, laying right below my feet as I was talking about the tailings piles, this is the mineral chrysocolla. And chrysocolla is a copper silicate, and like I said, it's really a pretty color, and it's easily distinguished from all of the surrounding brown rock that you see around here. So this is what you would collect, and then there is a fairly easy processing to where you get out copper out of the copper silicate. So, and that's exactly what he would do. So Wyatt would come out here during the winter months when it was much cooler. He would mine like crazy for 3 or 4 months, and then he would take all of his money, profits from the gold and the copper, and he would take it and go back to Los Angeles and spend the summers in Los Angeles. And then once again, he'd come back out. Now keep in mind, this was there right towards the end of his life, so I'm sure he probably wasn't putting in, 18-hour days. He would come out here and he would blow the stuffings out of something, he would collect this stuff, then he would process it, and this is how he spent his last few years. Okay, so as a geologist, when you take a look at this pretty blue mineral that we have here, and this is chrysocolla, and I'll put this back as soon as we get done with what we're about ready to do. But one indicator, minerals are one test. It's a simple test. Minerals are either hydrophobic, which means they're afraid of water, hydrophobic, water fearful, or they're hydrophilic. They love water. Okay, and so if they're in an associated a puddle of water, they're going to absorb as much water as they possibly can. So one test that you can do for chrysocolla in particular, now I'm going to put a little star here that says do not do this. Now I know that I'm a geologist, I know what this mineral is, and so this is a good indicator, but please do not go out and start putting all sorts of stuff in your mouth. There are poisonous minerals out there, and you can be having some very serious issues. So do not do this. Disclaimer, star, don't do this. But anyway, one good indicator of chrysocolla is if it absorbs water. And what we were always taught in geology puppy school when I was, learning how to become a geologist was with chrysocolla, make sure your tongue is just moist, not slopping wet. Don't be going like a dog and panting and drooling water everywhere. Just make sure it's a little wet, and you can take the chrysocolla and you can stick it to your tongue. And if it sticks, it's chrysocolla. If it doesn't, it's something else. But like I said, do not do this. This is only for people who know what these minerals are. So don't be going out and putting your tongue on everything out there. It could be some very serious consequences. So, but this is chrysocolla. It's hydrophilic. It loves water. And so anytime it's around water, it will absorb it like crazy. Okay, we're making the final push up to the mine here. We're going up the road. And all along the road here in the tailings piles coming out from the mine, there is copper silicate chrysocolla. Here is a sample right here that you can see on the rock. And that's what he was chasing. But it literally is all over the road. If you take a look, and I'll stop right here, there's chrysocolla, little fine grains in the road where he would pull this stuff up, and it crumbles very easy. It's a very soft mineral. All right, so what you have here is a old prospecting pit right at the top up here. That is not the mine. It's where they chased something into the ground and it probably gave out, and so they probably gave up on that hole. The mine is literally right in front of us here, and I'll walk on over to it. And as you come around here, you're going to be able to see, and then I'll give you the spiel on what not to do with a mine. So there it is, right there. Now, I know everybody is tempted to say, whoa, let's go in, let's find out what's in there. Well, there are all sorts of major problems with going in old abandoned mines. So let me get down just to the entrance, and then we'll take a look inside the dark, and maybe Rock Dr. Daughter can light it up a little bit, but I'm not going to go in very far. It's worrisome. Okay, I'm in the mine as far as I'm going to go. Now, as a trained geologist, I have an urge to go down further, but I also know that that is not what you do without proper gear. And proper gear, hard hat, this is certainly not a hard hat, and fresh air. Okay, you just don't know what the air is like down there, and you could wind up in a pocket of bad air and you are overcome immediately. So now that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what's happening here in this mine, but that is definitely a possibility and definitely a real danger. So you have to be careful of what's overhead and what you're breathing. The other thing that you have to really worry about is, I don't know the history of this mine. So did he go in and then he went back a little bit further? Did Wyatt, he dug into the mountain a little bit, and then did he go straight down and now there's a hidden drop off in here somewhere? I simply don't know. And so if you start venturing into here in the dark without a headlamp on your helmet to see what's going on, and without proper identification as to what is in the mine and how he actually mined, this is potentially a death trap. So you just have to be careful. Now, I know there's going to be people out there that say, oh, you're just being overly cautious. Go inside, go see what's in the mine. Are there bats in the mine? Well, frankly, I don't want to be breathing bat urine or bat guano. It has all sorts of really bad diseases associated with it, and I don't have any sort of breathing protection. So if there are bats in here, I hope they live forever. They're great. Bats would be fantastic. I love bats. I just don't want to breathe their stuff, if you know what I mean. So there could be bats in here. There could be Gila monsters. We do have them here in the Mojave Desert. There could be rattlesnakes. We do have them here in the Mojave Desert. So you just don't know what's in these things. So I'm sitting here in the fresh air. You can see Rock Dr. Daughter right behind me here. We are still in the blue sky, and I can feel the breeze. So we've got plenty of fresh air to breathe, and you can actually see, and you're going to be able to see here in the mine. And I do have something to show you, like right here at the entrance, which is profound. And actually, there's really no reason to go any deeper because you can see exactly what he was chasing. So that is what the entrance of the mine looks like now as it goes and it drops down, you know, a pretty steep incline. And then there is a little side spot right off over here. And it looks like he was chasing something that was right off over here. And it looks like he abandoned all those places. But what's really intriguing is if you take a look at the walls right as you enter into the mine, you're going to see copper silicate. This is chrysocolla, and there's a whole bunch here, and there is some right here. So that is what Wyatt Earp, during essentially the last 3 years of his life, that is what essentially sustained him while he was living here in Vidal and in Los Angeles. So he would come up here, like I said, during the winter months. He would chase this pretty blue mineral called chrysocolla, and then he would process it, get the copper and the gold out of it, copper and the gold out of the rock, and then he would proceed back to Los Angeles during the summer months to escape the heat. Because keep in mind, back in 1925 to 1928, we didn't have modern electricity and modern air conditioning like what we do now. So when it gets to be 120 here in the Mojave, trying to escape the heat by just ducking into shade would be miserable. So Los Angeles would be a much nicer place to weather out the summer. So anyway, this is Wyatt Earp's mine that he worked during the last few years of his life while he lived in Vidal Junction with his common law wife, Josephine Sarah Marcus. I don't know if you can see, but Rock Doctor Daughter is just about ready to get the drone up in the air so we can do a overflight of what this whole area looks like, and you'll be able to see where the mine is located in relationship to where the tailings piles are. And then we got to hightail it back out of here before it gets too hot. So I don't want anybody getting in trouble out here in the middle of the desert. We are pretty remote. Just a lot of tailing piles around here for only working the mine for a few years. There, 1925 to 1928, more or less. He moved an awful lot of rock. And now who knows? I don't know how many people he had working out here, whether it was just him or whether it was a group of him, his brothers, family members, friends. I have no idea how many people were moving this, but there is just a lot of tailings that are piled up around here. No indication of railroad cars or mining cars or anything along those lines. So if he was moving all this stuff, chances are he was probably moving it by hand and dumping it by hand. So that's amazing considering 1925 to 1928, essentially, he was literally right towards the end of his life. So he must have been a really fit individual to move all of this material. You know, never underestimate the what these people were like. I mean, they were not soft individuals, so they did not sit around and watch TV all day. They were out here working right up until the end of their life. So in the background, the city that you can see way off in the distance there, that's Parker, Arizona. So we are literally right by Parker and Earp, California. So we're actually in California here, and the Colorado River runs right through the middle of that valley, and on the other side is Parker, Arizona. I know that I'm going to be asked, Rock Doctor, why is there chrysocolla in the Whipple Mountains? So we just got done taking a look at the mine, which is essentially right behind us over here, and it's the Whipple Buckskin Mountains, and that's what this whole area is right here. So why is there copper in this area? I mean, you look around, I mean, it looks like classic desert, but yet Wyatt Earp, he found copper. In fact, like he had over 100 different mine sites that he had staked out for copper minerals. Now, what we found over at the mine is the mineral called chrysocolla, and it's a copper silicate. And so how did it get here? Well, to understand that, you got to understand just a couple of little concepts about geology, simple concepts, and I'm gonna not go into, this is not going to become a geology lesson and that sort of thing, but you can learn an awful lot of geology from a loaf of bread. So, not a sponsor, but here's a loaf of bread, and it's cut. And what's kind of interesting about this is when you get bread out, bread stacks just like rock layers do. The oldest layer is on the bottom, and then as geological time goes by, layers upon layers upon layers stack up, and so the youngest layer is on top. So in fact, actually, that's called the law of superposition. So the oldest is on the bottom, the youngest is on the top. And what's interesting about that, there's another law here. It's called the law of original horizontality, meaning that all rock layers are originally deposited flat. You can't have rock layers just floating up in space like this, and then another one kind of slaps on like this, and then maybe another one kind of slaps on like this. It doesn't work that way. So rock layers are deposited originally flat by the law of original horizontality. So that's essentially what we got here. We got a sedimentary sequence, or a geological sequence of rock here, as outlined in all of these samples of bread. Okay, now here we're actually in what's known as the Basin and Range area of North America. The western part of North America, the western United States, have been pulled apart. And in that process of being pulled apart by tectonic forces and how everything moves underneath in the mantle, and the crust kind of floats on the mantle, some areas get pushed together, some areas get pulled apart. And here in the western part of the United States, we have what's known as the Basin and Range. And what's interesting is, how am I going to show this? So we have a whole series of faults that go all the way across, since essentially from the Front Range in Colorado all the way over to the Sierra Nevadas in California, which we're fairly close to here. So the Whipple Mountains are part of this Basin and Range province. So what you have is you have a whole series of, in fact, I'm going to get you to hold this up. Okay, so now think about this as one rock layer. So don't think about it as slices of bread like I showed you before, where you have sedimentation and it stacks on top. So now we have one layer, and there's another layer on top, and there's another layer on top. So think about it that way. So this is a different layer now. So during the Basin Range, when things are pulled apart, you actually have areas where it actually pulls apart, and your valleys, let me down drop. You have valleys that down drop and ranges stick up. Okay, and then the faults are on either side. Now here, in this case, it's dipping at 90 degrees, which means it's going straight up and down. They're actually on a tilt here. So what we want to do is we want to cut this one like this, and we want to cut this one like this, and then we want to cut this one like this. And so what happens is, here we go. What happens is these faults, let's go like this. So as things are pulled apart this way, what happens is this block down drops. Let me go without this. Okay, this block down drops, and you have a whole series of mountain ranges, and basins, mountain ranges, and basins. So you have a series of basin and ranges, basins and ranges. So these faults represent areas of weakness in the crust where molten material underground can actually seep up, and hydrothermal fluids, hot water, basically brings up all the minerals from down below and actually deposits the minerals along these fault surfaces here. And so the fault surfaces are where you're going to be looking for your mineralized zones. And in this case, in the Whipple Mountains, you've got the Whipple Mountains here, and then you've got all of this copper mineral right along the old fault lines right behind me here. So the mineralized comes up along the fault plains with the hydrothermal fluids that are down here in the mantle as they percolate up through. And here we actually had a little bit of volcanism going on, and what happened was, let's demonstrate one more thing. So hang tight with us here. So here you actually had a whole series of stuff stacked on top of each other. Okay, you had a whole bunch of layers stacked on top of each other. And what happens was there was molten material underground that wanted to get up to the surface, and it started to bulge this whole area up. So it was being pushed up from the bottom, and all of this was starting to fracture. And so let's just simulate this as a fracture going right down the middle. And so what you have here is you have a whole series of rock layers that are being fractured and pulled apart as this molten material bulges up from underneath. And what you have then, as this bulges up, you have these cascading off, and it forms this type of fault where it kind of comes up and arches over, and all of these faults along the way are all mineralized. So right behind us here, you have the Whipple Buckskin Mountains, and all along these fault lines, and the mine that we were at literally is in right along one of these fault plains. And so the mineralized material came up, the hydro fluid, the hot hydro water, the hot fluids came up, and that's where the copper came from. All of these other minerals are associated with it. Chrysocolla was only one of them. There's also azurite, there's malachite. All of those are copper-laden minerals that came up along how the Buckskin Whipple Mountains were actually formed. And you can learn that by massacring a loaf of bread. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming along on our little adventure today as we kind of explored from Earp, California,
right,
over here to Vidal Junction, where right behind us is where, you know, where Wyatt and Josephine lived from about 1925 to 1928. And then we went out and explored the Happy Days mine. So hopefully you've enjoyed our little look at the life and times of Wyatt Earp here in Earp, California, and Vidal Junction.
right.
Did you know that Wyatt Earp lived out here in Vidal Junction?
No, I did not.
No. In fact, probably...
I thought he lived in Tombstone.
Tombstone? Yeah, well, he did. And Dodge City, Kansas.
Right.
So he came that way. In fact, actually, if I remember right, I believe he was actually born in Illinois, and he moved out west at a fairly young age and became a lawman, and he was I don't want to say a card shark, but I think he made some pretty good money at the gambling tables back in those days. And then he wound up mining. In fact, he actually staked over 100 different mines in this location. So he actually was quite the little prospector in his time as well. So, and then he wound up, I mean, like I said, this video is not all about life and times of Wyatt Earp, but he wound up going up to Alaska during the Alaskan gold rush, and he wound up going just about everywhere. I mean, if there was a way of making a little bit of money doing it back in those days, I think he was involved with it. So, and like we said in the intro, you were 2 years old while Wyatt Earp was alive. So, you know,
and living here.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, that is amazing. The amount of history that you have seen is just absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, but you know, from where I was born to here is a long walk, so I didn't take it.
You did not, and it was much harder here. So
yeah.
So, but anyway, so make sure if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe. Our treasure gem collection of followers is slowly growing, and we really appreciate everybody who comes along on our adventures and subscribes to our videos. We really do appreciate it, and we really do thank you for joining and coming along. And slowly we will be getting to those 1,000 subscriber mark and the 4,000 watch hours, but we're not quite there yet. So make sure you hit that big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Please leave us a comment if you like any of the stuff that you've seen today about Earp, California, about the home of Wyatt and Josephine, and about the Happy Days mine. So let us know in the comments what you like the best. And until next time, don't take a trip, let the trip take you. We will be seeing you on down the road.
We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals they take us higher. The night's young, it has just begun as she puts her hand